So we're back with you for another week in our Love and Intuition versus Fear program. And this week we wanted to talk to you about the topic of trust within this context of, the area we're discussing. And so, Linda, do you want to just share why that was a word that came to mind for you when we were talking about what we wanted to cover?
Sure. Well, largely because Sid Banks used it in that quote that we started the whole conversation with. I think he says, I should have looked it up, trusting or faith in the abundance behind life. And I don't, it's interesting. I think I was thinking about this, that in a way, trust and faith especially maybe, they're not words that you find utilized a whole lot within certainly psychological and even in a lot of spiritual communities. Somehow they've come to have I don't know, there's just some sort of religious connotation there that people shy away from. And when I think of faith or trust, I often think about the man that Bill Moyers interviewed. I'm blanking on his name right now. The guy who wrote The Power of Myth.
I didn't know that.
Famous. Anyway, it'll come to me. Joseph Campbell.
Oh, right, yeah.
Joseph Campbell. He, at one point, Bill Moyers, who was a journalist doing the very famous Power of Myth interviews with him, asked him, would you say you're a person of faith? And he said, no. Why would I need to have faith when I have experience?
Right.
And I just really love that that's, to me, that is what faith is about, that I have direct experience in certain things. And as a result, I trust them. It's kind of like, I have a direct experience that every morning when I get up at 5 o'clock, within the next hour and a half, the sun is going to come up.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of faith in that.
Yeah. Yeah, trust that 100%.
And my experience of seeing the logic behind life and how it works has really, what we call the three principles, has really, brought a lot of trust that the three principles really do point to how life works, that there is an infinite intelligence behind everything, that we're experiencing that infinite intelligence in this thing we call life via our ability to be aware of it, consciousness, and that we're creating our experience of it all through the power of thought. I mean, how else can we create it? It's real simple. And the logic of that has just, it's brought me, I guess another word I would use is safety, a feeling of safety that I just know that there's nothing that life could hand me that is guaranteed to sink me, that I will always be able to access a way to see it and think about it that will guide me through it. And so that brings a high degree of trust and safety. And therefore, it makes life gentler and easier, and has pretty much eliminated for me almost completely experiences of anxiety.
Yeah, that future managing, if you're trying to future proof your life with the what if, but what if, but what if, but what if, that knowing that you don't need to worry about that when you get there, you'll have everything you need, is so helpful. It's just, I think when you have anxiety, like 90% of everything you think is about the future.
Yeah.
And it's like that understanding, that knowing, because I didn't realize, it's always been true, but I didn't realize it. And then once I realized it, like I couldn't trust it before because I had no idea of the truth of it, that when you get there, you have everything you need in the moment. You always do. And so it's always had been true, but because it was unrealized, I thought I had to keep future proofing with my mind and figuring out what needed to happen in advance. And the realization of that was like someone came in with a big eraser, you would say rubber, and just rubbed out everything that I had to think about in the future. And I like, I don't have to do that anymore. And so that was my anxious thinking. What if this happens? What if that happens? What about next Tuesday? Or what I've got to do tomorrow? It's like, even if a thought comes up with like, oh, I mean, we're going camping in a couple of weeks. It's like, what if I get a migraine when I'm camping? Like, I don't even get to the end of the sentence, and I'm like, ugh. I don't even bother to indulge the thought. Do you know what I mean? It might arise, and then I'm just like, it disappears and goes off to bed, because I have faith that you really don't need to think about that until you get there.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah. And you know, I think I've become better at, let me change this. I think I've become better at something that some spiritual teachers have called not being disturbed by experiences, by appearances, not being disturbed by appearances, and being non-resistant to experiences. So, like, for example, in the past, in the farther past, when I have had medical procedures, you know, we talked earlier about how I just had knee surgery last Friday, I would have experienced a pretty high degree of anxiety. Who knows? I mean, I've just been anxious about those kinds of things from the time I was a little girl, and I can't even tie specific thought to it. Isn't really that I thought I was going to die, or, you know, just maybe it's just the unknownness and the strangeness of it, and the you know, the fact that when you're under anesthesia, you don't have any control. I mean, who knows? I could spend from now until the cows come home trying to figure out why I experience such debilitating anxiety around medical things. I often joke that it is kind of a cosmic joke that I am that I have been afraid of doctors, and I married a doctor and sleep with one every night.
Yeah, you realize they're not quite so bad after all.
It's been a great in vivo desensitization.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was so fascinating to me that this last experience of a surgery was so different. You know, I had a little bit of anxiety right before I went into the surgery center, because of COVID, you can't have a family member accompany you. So this was the first time I've experienced having a pretty significant medical procedure without a family member, Bill, holding my hand.
Yeah.
And I had a little bit of butterflies, and I said to him, I said, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about that. But I also kept thinking, don't be disturbed by that, Linda. It just is. You know, it's just a thing. It's just an illusion in the outer world. And you can create a lot of things about it. You can make up that it's a really horrible, terrible, awful thing and that you're alone. Or you can make up, you know, that you have all the resources that you need to get through it. Or you can totally trust that there is an infinite spirit, an infinite intelligence behind life is going to guide you through the whole thing. And the really funny thing was that I got in there, got a nurse who was hysterical, just hysterical. She was so funny and obviously really good at what she does, putting people at ease.
Yeah.
We laughed through the whole hour of getting prepped. And I think because we were so lighthearted, when the nurse came out of the operating room to say, well, we're getting ready to bring you back, she was lighthearted. She could sense the lightheartedness of it. And we got into a lighthearted exchange. And then the anesthesiologist came out and he looked kind of sober, you know, and he was just kind of getting through his thing, doing his thing. But I think he got touched by overall lightheartedness of the whole team. And the next thing you knew, he was joking with me and with everybody. And, and I had to laugh because I remember him saying, well, we're going to give you some anti-anxiety medicine as we wheel you toward the operating room. And I was thinking to myself, well, I don't know if I really need that. My blood pressure was 124/70. I didn't feel anxious. I was actually pretty excited that this was going to be getting done and that I was going to go through it, feeling pretty peaceful. And then, of course, whatever they gave me put me out. And the next thing I knew, I was awake. But I was so grateful that I really knew that God was at work in that situation, what we call God, the infinite intelligence behind life, that it's benevolent, it's intelligent. It was giving me everything I needed in the form of my own thinking and in the form of the people who showed up around me to move through it with incredible ease. And I marvel, Nicola, about how different that is compared to past experiences, all because of what I have known, that there really is this feeling of, safety, a feeling of safety. I remember, when the pandemic started, I think I might have mentioned this last time, a woman from Salt Spring contacted me. And Salt Spring was where Sid Banks lived and had his experience and began to teach this thing we call the three principles. And this lady had known Sydney Banks way back in the very beginning and had gone through some really difficult medical things with one of her children and with herself. And one of the things that she wrote me was that Sid said to her, it's all God. It's all God. The medicine is God. The procedures are God. It's all God helping you. And, that's just been my experience, that there, even in the most difficult things I've gone through, that there's been something there helping me through that. And as long as I don't block it or block the awareness of it, whatever you want to call it, by getting into a lot of crunchy thinking about, oh, this is awful, this is terrible, this bad thing is going to happen, or what if, as long as I just don't go there, don't get disturbed by that.
I love that, because what you made me think of when you were just sharing that, it's all God, is that quite often we'll have people in our groups that so they learn the principles, and then because they've learned the principles, it's like, well, somehow there's a logic that there's nothing to do here. I just need to see it all as thought, and I don't want to diagnose this. I don't want any cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't want any medication. I don't want any operation. I don't want any visits to a psychiatrist. I don't want this kind of help or that kind of help anymore, because the principles should be enough. And I really, what I heard in what you said and what I've been seeing is just like, no, that it's all God. And so, I mean, the idea that you would sit there with your poorly knee and just go, well, this is obviously just thought. It's like, no, you take your understanding and your common sense and your wisdom and your intuition, not even intuition, you're just like common sense knows, like, there are things called doctors, like I'm going to use them, and they have things called scalpels or whatever they use, and they're going to do something in my knee, and there are nurses to support me, and there are drugs I can take that will mean that I don't have to be awake through the procedure. And it's like, there's nothing off the table.
No.
It's all God, it's all mind, it's all after the fact of mind, it's all creations in form there to support you as in this benevolent force of life that moves in the direction of health, all there to support you.
Absolutely. And, do I kind of suspect that if I was an enlightened spiritual master, it might be possible for me to get to a point where I could heal myself without surgery? I kind of think that's possible. Um,
But it wasn't for Sid.
no, that's true.
He didn't become
Although,
immortal as a result
uh,
of his understanding in his
although,
physical body.
yeah, I think my sense of Sid was that he was ready to go. He surrendered. He was non-resistant to what happened, I think, in his body because he was ready. He was ready to go. He knew that he had done what he was here to do, and
Yeah.
so he just surrendered to that process.
Yeah.
That process is going to happen for me at some point. I didn't think this was the timing. I mean, didn't have any sense of that. But I do think I mean, there are too many stories, well documented stories of spontaneous healings from all kinds of things for me to dismiss that that we have the powers within us to heal ourselves. But I find it very humbling to be able to say, I don't have that power. I wish I did, but I don't. I did my best to be very positive about what I was experiencing in my knee and to do whatever I could see to do to, work with it and heal, participate and be harmonious with my body's ability to heal it. It didn't happen. There was a thing there that was getting in the way of it. And so does it make sense to me that there's a benevolent energy under the universe who says, oh, that's okay. I'll help you in another way. There's a little process you'll have to go through, but I'm going to help you with some nice doctors who really are caring and who've been trained to be very competent at what they do, and some healthcare providers who are just really going to provide you with a lot of warmth and support and care, and and of course that's
Linda, the fact that it looks that way to you is to my mind is a result of your understanding, right? Because I could imagine somebody watching this and going, yeah, but we have the NHS and I've been on a waiting list for 9 months. And when I got there, the receptionist and the doctor were all really grumpy. And then they made a mistake on my leg. And then I had this whole terrible experience. And then I had to go on another waiting list to get it all fixed. And I don't relate to your story at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's like I don't know, I might be going out on a limb here, but it seems to me that we get through this understanding, we get to take accountability for the experiences we have as well. Mm-hmm. Like if we're in a low level of consciousness, I mean, if you're in a low level of consciousness, you could have picked out the bits of dirt on the floor and the nurse that had a grumpy face and the squeaky wheel on the trolley, right? That as you got wheeled down. But in the space you were in that light-hearted space, there could have been a squeaky wheel on the trolley, and it would have entered your consciousness, right? It's not part of your reality. What's in your reality is the smile on the face of the nurse and the kind hand that she's holding you with, right? And an appreciation for like, how lucky am I that I got the best team in the whole of the states to like look after me. Like how did I get the nicest nurse, right? It's like that it's an inside out job. And so to me that's so simple. Like if you live in a nice feeling, it just looks like people in the world are nicer and like more lighthearted. And to me that's one of the best things about this understanding, is that the deeper my understanding goes, the nicer all my clients get. Like the sexier my husband gets and the cuter my kids are. It's like it's a total win. And so we get to take some accountability for the experiences we have, because it works inside out, right? Like thought creates experience. The level of consciousness we're in at any given moment like bounces back at us in the world of form, right? We know what level of consciousness we're in, because we look out of our eyes and we see whether the world looks unkind or whether it looks full of laughter and kindness, right?
Yeah.
So it's always like if I'm having it's helpful to me, because I know that when I'm having what looks like a terrible situation going on with really unhelpful people around me, I might get totally caught up in that story of it. But afterwards, when I settle back down and I get reflective about it, I see it's me. Like there's somewhere to look and it's here, not out there. And so that Like you could tell the story, and if someone doesn't have this understanding, they just think that you happen to have a really nice hospital on your doorstep. But actually, it's the feeling that you brought to the operation. The nurse was probably like, oh, this went home and said, oh, I had this lovely patient today. She really made me laugh, you know? And then she takes that feeling home to her family, and it has that lovely ripple effect. It's so much, all of that in that one simple story about your knee operation.
Yeah, and it's funny. About 5 days before I had the knee surgery, I had a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. So I had two. I had two.
You've been through it.
Two anesthesias in 1 week, and so this was a different surgery center. And when I walked into that surgery center, that one was really being strict. So my husband couldn't even come into the building. He just had to literally drop me at the door, and I walked in, and there was a woman at the counter who I was really struck that she never looked at me, never looked up and said, welcome, or, and I'd had a pretty difficult time with the prep for those procedures. Anyone who's gone through it knows it's not easy, and I had a particularly rough one. And there would have been a time when I would have gotten really caught up in a lot of thinking about, well, how dare she not greet me, or what a sourpuss, or whatever. But I just looked at her and I thought, oh my goodness, it's just so natural for human beings. It's so natural for us as beings, when we're in a good space, to connect, to love, to care. There's got to be something going on in her life. Who knows? Maybe she's just busy. Maybe she's not feeling well. Maybe she's got something going on in her life. But I was not disturbed by her appearance.
Yeah.
As someone who was just not very present. It was more of a, my heart goes out to her, and I'm going to do my level best to be very gentle with her.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters, because I don't want to take on her bad mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to make this experience any more difficult than it already is. And it's just a much nicer feeling to be in a place of love. Now I didn't know that 15 years ago. I would have really probably, I might have even called her out.
Yeah. 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 No, I know what you mean.
But not anymore. It's like, I'm not going to take that on. I'm not going to be disturbed and create resentment or hurt or offense within myself, because that just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I can't be bothered with it anymore.
Yeah.
It's always like I feel like, oh, I'm too old for all that anymore. Like, who wants to spend a minute of their time in resentment and upset and grumpiness and getting annoyed at people for not being smiley? Like, oh, I'm too old for all that now. And it isn't. It's kind of like my understanding. My understanding is put it in the, like, in the same way I don't read trashy newspapers, and I might have done when I was 20. It's just not part of my world anymore. If there's one on the bus, I might pick it up and have a look, but pretty soon I'll put it to one side, because I'm not really interested in bringing myself down anymore. And I know I'm bringing myself down. And if I don't if I stop bringing myself down, I'm up. Because we're naturally up, we just bring ourselves down. And that's what I have trust and faith in, is that when I stop doing that, when I'm not interested in that, when I can't be bothered with it, it just doesn't look relevant or important, I'm up.
Right. In a way, for me, it's a little selfish, because going into that procedure, I wanted to be as healthy and as poised and as aware, so that I could take care of myself as I could.
Yeah.
I didn't want to give her any room to disturb me. I also know that when I am in that place of not being disturbed, of just being in love, to whatever degree I can, that it's highly likely that's going to touch her.
Yeah. Well, and I learned this so much from your husband, but that whole link between state of mind and just having a healthy immune system, that was like, when COVID hit, like that was, to me, it was really apparent, like if I'm gonna catch this virus, then I want it to land in a healthy immune system, as healthy immune system as I can.
Right, right.
And so that was a real, not incentive, but it was a real, it became not a priority, but it was like, why would I want to get myself riled up? I know that stress and a healthy immune system are not very good friends with each other. So like, I want to, it's of service to me in any healing in my body to be in a space of love and peace and joy. And same, when you're going for an operation, of course, that's the same as well. It's like, why would you want to have a load of inflammation and stress and angst and mess with your body chemistry when like you want the best recovery possible, right? It's got to be very practical.
Yeah, and it is so practical on a science, on a scientific level, and also on a metaphysical level. I really know that I'm being guided. We talked about that, at length the last 2 conversations that we had, and I know that I'm going to hear that guidance, see that guidance, however you want to say it, know that guidance as the more calm and peaceful and quiet that I am. I want access to that.
Yeah.
And especially in an environment where things feel unknown, or I'm by myself, or things are a little scary, I want to be able, so if something came through that said, don't do this or check this out, here's a good example. This was amazing. My father was very sick. He had Parkinson's disease, and he got a pneumonia, and something else went on in his body. This was probably six months before he actually died. So we actually, as a result of what happened, we got another 6 months, beautiful 6 months with him. And so we're in the hospital. We've been told by the medical establishment that he was dying, that there was nothing more that could be done for him. They had removed his food, removed sources of sustenance, and said there's just no point. His organs are going to start shutting down, and it will make him comfortable. And I remember I asked the doctor, how do you know? And he said, because there are no bowel sounds. His bowels have shut down. And I remember sitting by his bed, Nicola, and just talking to him, and he kind of came out of a stupor and looked at me, and he said, I want a blueberry muffin. And I thought, that's really strange. I mean, that's kind of doesn't fit my sense of a person who's dying and whose bowels are shutting down asking for a blueberry muffin. They just generally don't feel very hungry. He's experiencing hunger. And I it was like in my head, I had this thought, put your hand on his belly. And I was like, okay, I don't usually put my hand on my dad's belly. I was holding his hand, but I stuck my hand under the sheet and I put my hand on his abdomen. And in a very short period of time, I felt his bowels move. I felt, how when your stomach growls, well, you can feel that. You can feel that activity. And I heard it and I felt it. And I turned to Bill, who was there, and I said, Bill, if his bowels have shut down, would I have been experiencing, feeling and hearing a bowel movement of the, in the bowel? And he said, no, absolutely not. And I said, would you come and listen? And so Bill did. He said, oh my gosh, he's got active bowel sounds. He's not dying.
Yeah.
And, it took a little bit of standing for ourselves with the medical team, but we got the appropriate care. He got treated differently. He got to eat. He went home, and he had another 6 months with his family that were really, really beautiful. But that intuitive sense to check and to trust myself just came through. If I had been if I had been in a lot of thought about, oh, this is terrible, this is awful, this is horrible, or if I had been in a lot of thought about being angry at the medical team or whatever, I just feel confident that it would have been a lot harder for me to trust, to hear and sense that intuitive guidance. And to have that sort of like, it was really interesting, that sort of like, no, Linda, put your hand on his belly right now.
Yeah.
And to follow that and discover that I'd gotten a piece of information that actually changed the situation completely. Well, I value that quiet.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, but this is what I hear as I've talked to you over the last, this session and the other sessions, is like, here is a woman that totally 100% knows and trusts and looks to intuition as the guide, and that over and over, and like, totally, why would you look anywhere else? Like, it's very different from the way most of us live our lives, but it's really like that force is strong in you, right? Like, I can hear how much confidence you have in that. And that's certainly for me, like, I know we're just finishing up this one, but like, it certainly for me is like, what if we allowed that to become the guiding force for our lives as it is for you? Like, what if we, maybe we haven't considered, maybe I hadn't considered, like, just how much there's that one simple thing, yet it's such a giving thing, but like that one simple thing, from finding, spades on the beach, shovels on the beach, and to knowing where to put your hands in that story you just shared. It's like, in a very practical, very everyday, but also really important moments, and in every day-to-day common sense stuff as well. But to look to know there's this little, often strange voice that will whisper and guide and just let you know.
Yeah, really, this is a conversation about the nature of mind.
Yeah.
And we're calling it intuition, the nature of mind. What is the nature of that infinite intelligence behind life? And since time immemorial, spiritual teachers, wise sages, guides have been talking about the still, small voice within. Mm-hmm. That's everything, the still, small voice within.
Yeah.
It's that we're not alone in this universe.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ever.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we'll wrap it up for this week, and then we will come back, and next time we're going to talk about abundance and giving. It's very exciting. Thank you, Linda.